Well, welcome everybody to Living Free in Tennessee, where we talk about building the life you choose on your terms. Today is Friday, June 24th, 2022, and this is episode 586 of Living Free in Tennessee. And it is a homestead update day. I have just arrived back on my homestead after being gone since Tuesday. I got up at about and out at about 5:45 this morning from Billy Bond's place, Permapastures Farm, where they welcomed me with open arms, fed me fantastic lamb for dinner last night, showed me a bit around their homestead. We recorded a little bit of a snippet about the upcoming swale workshop that's going to be done at John Willis's at the end of July. And just in general, had a good time to sit down in person and have person-to-person fellowship without being surrounded by a gajillion people at an event, which, it's not bad to be an event, but sometimes you just want to catch up with friends. And it was very, very empowering to be at his house. They were super welcoming. It is a beautiful location. It cools down at night. It almost made me want to move the Holler Homestead to North Carolina mountains, except for the North Carolina gun laws are kind of like, eh. But, I might be able to get over that. And it's always great to see another homestead and what they're doing there. And I know every single member of Billy's family is amazing. His wife is awesome. I hadn't met her yet. I've met his son, of course. And it was just really cool. So it was really fun. And hello, JS, PA Prepper. Oh, I know what JS stands for, PA Prepper. It's funny. It says there's nobody on the live stream, but you're talking to me in chat. Guys, I am going to take questions at the end of this. We're recording live today, and we're going to do a homestead update. I'm going to talk about what's happening next with the sheep now that they've pretty much gone through and eaten almost everything off my 3.2 acres here. And I'm going to talk about how the drought is impacting our land this year, because lack of rain is not our usual problem, but it is an occasional problem here. And other livestock things that happened. We had a bit of a sudden loss, but not of a sheep. And more things that are going on at the homestead. It's kind of interesting to do this homesteading update because I did one last Friday. And as y'all know, I've been doing the Garden 30. Hello, Tori. Welcome to the live stream. And I then left. So I was like cranking out Garden 30s all weekend long through Monday night. And then Tuesday I left, and I've been gone. And I came back on Friday. So I was gone for 4 days, and things look entirely different here. Entirely different. It's amazing how fast things change. Also, the person who sometimes mows my lawn showed up yesterday instead of this weekend, and we weren't letting him mow because the sheep were eating. We let him mow this time. Eldon, get your chores done. That's awesome. Jenny, I'm going to have a link out for joining this at the end for the Q&A live. I'm going to put that on the Holler Neighbor secret back channel. You know where that is. And if you want to join, you can. Okay. So I don't have a lot of announcements today, but I do have two. One, the webinar for members is up and you can register for it. After my last podcast where I'm like, hey, that's going to be up. I went and I made the form, saved it, filed it away. My head is done, and realized they can't fill out the form if there's no link to the form on the homepage. So if you go to livingfreeintennessee.com right now, first post at the top of the page is that webinar. It's going to be next Thursday, June 30th at 7 p.m. Central. I'm going to talk about 5 aspects of event management that you will want to think about, consider, and build into your plan. If you are doing your own event, I'm tapping into Mama Sauce for some of her things. We're basically tapping into all of the successful events we've done here and Self-Reliance Festival to kind of build a bit of guidance for people who are looking to do their own events, because there are so many of you doing events. And it's a good time to do events. We need to tighten our relationships right now. We need to have communication with each other. We need to be building a system that works, whether or not the system around us works. And we've always had this, right? I look at all the people who are worried about problems coming, and I'm like, yes, I can see why you're worried. But the solution to this challenge has been here the entire time. We are the solution. Just building with each other is the solution, right? Trading with each other is the solution. Taking care of each other is the solution. That's it. It's pretty much that simple. And while things may get hard, while things may have to change for some people. While there may be external forces that are difficult or hard to look at, I'm going to do a whole chat later this week. Two of them. One, on Sunday, Tori's jumping on, and we're going to do a deep pantry quick dive for her. And I'm going to do that with a few different people with a few different backgrounds so you can see how we implement developing a deep pantry in specific situations. And hopefully when you're watching this, you'll be writing your own stuff down because your deep pantry is a savings account of food and supplies. That's what it is. Okay. Letty just signed up for the webinar. Awesome. We'll see you there. The other thing is I'm going to have a talk about preparing for SHTF. I always say that wrong for sure. If I actually say it, I was trying not to swear today because I don't want every episode to have the S word or the F word in it, right? SHTF situations. And if stuff really melted down really bad, like Civil War era bad, what do you do to prepare for that? Because I think we are mistaken when we try to prepare for that in the way we prepare for that. And I want to have a heart-to-heart with a couple other like prepper-minded people about this because we are the solution and the solution is right in front of us. And it takes discipline and it takes work, but it ain't hard. It's kind of like freedom. Freedom is not difficult, but it takes discipline, right? Okay. That's just my random thought because I was driving this morning for like 4.5 hours. Before we jump into the show, I want to remind you, if you want to reach out and give me a comment or a question, just do it via email, Nicole@livingfreeintennessee.com, NICOLE@livingfreeintennessee.com, or go to livingfreeintennessee.com and click on the contact form. A lot of you do reach out to me on other platforms like Telegram and MeWe and those other things, and sometimes I answer. But when you talk to me in a chat app, it's as if you walked by me in the hallway and said something. And if I was thinking about anything else when that happened, I may or may not remember exactly what we talked about. I don't have any reason to follow up because I'm a forgetful person. And part of how I handle those things is to have my email be the place where such things happen. And for those of you who've emailed me since Self-Reliance Festival, I am behind on email, but I'm getting through them a block at a time, and I will get to you. I will get to you. I promise. Unless you just sent me an email, call me a poopy head, in which case I won't get to you because your email is not worth my time. So don't just send me emails calling me poopy. I mean, you can. If you need to call me a poopy head, that's fine. Just you may not get the satisfaction of a reply to that one. With that, it's time for our first segment of today's show, and that is Featured Forage, what we are finding out and about. I'm at a bit of a disadvantage on this one because all the forage I just saw was over at Billy Bond's Permapasture Farm, and he has tons of edible stuff growing all over that place. It was awesome. It was like everywhere I looked, there was mullein, there was rosemary, there were strawberries, there were field peas or cow peas, I think they are. He has all sorts of stuff just coming up out of the ground that is herbal or is edible, and that is how he's approached his design for his property. And it's always exciting to see somebody's design just come into its own. Got fruit trees, like it looks great. Here, what I've got is something I've never, ever had before. Never, ever. You know what I have? I have a giant dill bush. I love dill. There can never be too much dill grown. And I'll get these like spindly little dills here and there. This year, I have a dill bush, and it's from seed. I started seed that Jenny collected and then gave to me. That's actually the seed is from Jenny, in case you don't know that. I started it this year inside, transplanted it outside in a number of locations, and the hillside garden that was just redone by Tactical and Carrie, and I see Carrie's on there right now. Fed a hornworm to a turkey. It's epic tug of war. Yeah, hornworms, turkey. Your poultry will love those. They will learn to follow you when you're looking at your tomatoes. But I have this great dill plant, which means the fertility in that spot for dill is perfect. And now I'm at that point where, like, do I harvest some of it or do I just let it go back to seed? And I'm thinking I'm going to harvest maybe 10% of the dill heads for pickling and then just leave it and let it reseed itself and see if it comes back in that same spot next year. I'm hoping it will. And I have other dill plants that are doing pretty well in other parts of the property, like in my garden. Those I'll actually harvest and dry and do all the things I do with the dill so that I have dill in the winter. because the cool thing about dill is you end up with this tall stalk and it's got feathery little leaves. And the dill head is great for dill pickles. You can put those sticky pieces in your pickles too for a dill flavor. But the wispy, feathery parts, what I do is I'll cut it into hunks and freeze it in manageable amounts. And then when it's frozen, I'll just sort of peel the feathery bits off of the stems. And then I have a pile of feathery bits, and then I shake them through a strainer, and then any extra sticks from the dill come out. And then I have really nice fine dill for making salad dressings and those sorts of things. That's the thing I like to do. So that is what's up with my dill. I should be starting to get green beans this week, and my bush beans that I thought were pole beans are bush beans. They're just very tall bushes. I went up and looked at them today, and they would have been 3 or 4 times as long after I left. So luckily, I don't have to build a last-minute trellis. The package did not lie. It's just that when I added all that rabbit poop, it made the bush extra robust, and that was pretty darn cool. Wild raspberries are ripe. Most of the wild raspberries on my property just got eaten by sheep, but there are a couple places where they're not. And that probably means the wine berries are coming on. I haven't been up to look at them since I got home, but wine berries are a little bit sweeter than raspberries, and they are very easy to propagate, and they're very hard to kill because my biggest wineberry patch is growing out from under a shed I put on top of the wineberries because they were just simply where I wanted some infrastructure. And I was like, it'll kill them. No, it won't. No, it won't. But I've been taking cuttings off of those, and I'm going to be moving some wineberries around to some strategic spots on the property because I really like them. It's really one of the things, even though I'm a ketogenic eater, I don't eat a lot of carbs, I don't eat a lot of fruit, is I take, I'll go out and get a handful of strawberries or whatever's ripe, blueberries, and eat those in the morning, and I'm fine with it. I'm eating seasonally. It's linked to the ground. Like the ground is linked to me. It's part of the circle of doing that. So yeah, Permapastors Farm asks, how'd you get home so fast? The way I got home so fast was I didn't stop for anything except for gas. But it's only 4 hours from your house. That's how early I left your house. Actually, kind of wish I would have stayed longer, but I wanted to get this live stream done. Anyway, it was such a fun visit out there. Such a fun visit. Okay. The bergamot or bee balm is ready to harvest. The flowers are harvestable for teas, and it's an herbal remedy you can use. You can make it into salves, and the leaves work really well for teas too. I mostly just use it for flavor, though. I like to mix it with mint and blackberry leaves, and it's so tasty. So that's happening, and I may dig up some of that and move it to my hillside garden because my bee balm that was up there got somehow decimated by. It is possible to kill mint, and it is possible to kill bee balm. It is impossible to kill comfrey here. But those two things were killed when we moved the dirt. Like the apple mint did not get killed. That's just coming up. It's ready to harvest and dry. I did miss a lot due to travel, and so I'm looking forward to skipping like a little hippie lady through my land today and just seeing what's where. I did just go through the garden so I can tell you what's up with the grow section today. Tactical found what looked like a pear near the pig pasture. He's like, it's a pear. And I'm like, well, it's not pear season. He gave it to the pig. She ate it. She like chomped on it and swallowed it, loved it. And he found a few more and brought them over here. And he showed them to me because I'm like, well, maybe there's a quince over there, but I've never heard of a quince tree. I've only heard of quince bushes. And he brought it to me. And sure enough, we got Bartletts over there. There are Bartlett pears, and it's a giant tree by the pond. And I think it's dropping its unripe fruit right now because of the drought conditions here, even though there's water kind of near that spot near its roots. But I'm super excited because it's like this big around. And when I moved in here, I had a pear tree, and I really like pears. And my pear tree just got diseased, and we had to take it out. And I have some other pear trees here, but they're not doing great because I'm not doing what I need to do to those pear trees, or maybe I put them in the wrong place. I don't know. Jenny, who lives at base camp's like, how did I miss that? There's a Bartlett pear tree at your house, Jenny. I think because of all the clearing we've been doing, it opened it up for that tree to get light because we took a few trees out last fall. And the reason we missed it last year is it didn't get enough light to have fruit or drop fruit. So I'm going to go peer longingly up into that tree later today to see if there are more pears or if we're just getting a little bit of a rain of pear. The pear fruit itself did not look like it has cedar apple rust on it, which my trees do get here. And you can see it on the skin of the fruit too. Super excited about that. If you pick half the pear blossoms, there's no blossoms, PA. It's all fruit at this point. And it's so tall, I'm not sure we can do that easily. Like, this is what happens to pear trees that are full size when you ignore them for 20 years is they get really tall. And the cool thing about that is when they fruit, you get tons of fruit. Like I used to have a pear tree like this in Portland, Oregon, and we would make gallons and gallons and gallons of cider. It was like a whole neighborhood event where we get together and grind up the pears and press the pears and get the juice. And then I'd ferment some of it into hard pear cider, which was really tasty. I'd add a little honey, so it was more like a mead. But then we also had a bunch of fresh pear juice, which if we have a lot of pears there, that's what's happening is I'm going to can fresh pear juice, and I'm going to use that as my base for elderberry syrup this winter, because the apple orchard where I used to get apple cider from has disappeared from our lives and nobody else bought it. So I don't have a really easy apple source nearby, but I'm happy to do it with pear cider. I do that instead of sweetener for my syrup that I make. It's not really a syrupy I don't add honey to it either, by the way. So my elderberry syrup is more like elderberry juice with spices, and the base is going to be pear juice this year if we have pears. I'm super excited about that. And it will can like apple juice. Yeah, so that was my big announcement from the forage side. As I've been here 15 years foraging through these woods, and there was a giant pear tree we missed. Think about that. Think about that. It's interesting what happens when you start digging into the land and running livestock through it and clearing things out. You make room for the things that you want. Next segment is livestock, where we talk about what's up with the animals around. So Tuesday when I left, the pregnant rabbit stopped moving, but she was still breathing. Tactical ran up the hill and said, I think you need to look at this rabbit, even though you need to leave. And I'm like, okay. So I went down and I looked, and she was no longer breathing, and she had died. We don't know why she died. I did not do an autopsy. She was pregnant. She was due to deliver the next day. I suspect two things. One, it's unseasonably hot here. And she may have just gotten too hot and she was pregnant and extra sensitive to it. Two, a complication with pregnancy that I don't know what happened, right? There was no sign of disease. All the other rabbits are fine. Rabbits are super easy to raise, right? Okay, that long silence is me looking at you with that look on my face like, it's easy. We're just going to raise rabbits. Rabbits have been a challenge for us here. And we're going to keep at it. The good news is Nighthawk's rabbits next door just had babies. So we may take a female from him if he has a female and fold her into our system. I'm also hoping to get some breeding stock from John Willis, who has very robust rabbits that he has had on pasture, which is pretty cool. So we're just going to keep trying, right? And keep figuring out what's up. The other female is also due this week if she got pregnant. I don't think she's pregnant. Like, I palpitated her belly before I left and I didn't feel lumps in there. So I have a suspicion she's not pregnant, but I'm going to give her another 4 or 5 days to make sure, just in case I'm wrong, because I'm inexperienced with rabbits, and then we'll breed her again and see what happens there. Next up, I'm going to talk about the sheep. So I have 3.2 acres and it's a drought year. So stuff's not growing back as fast as usual. And we've had the sheep for 4 weeks now, as of today. Yay. I actually wish I would have gotten sheep a decade earlier, except for I don't think I could have handled it because of the fencing requirements here. But now that they've cleared stuff, the fencing is also going to get easier. But the fact that it was not cleared meant that the fencing was not easy. And luckily, the tactical redneck was content to spend the last month every single day that he was here working at least half the day on the next paddock and the next paddock and the next paddock. Okay, so just realize how much work this has been. So the sheep have one more paddock on my property, and then they've been through the whole property, some places 2 times already. Most everything is beaten back, and we've had a drought year, so it's not growing back as quickly, which is probably the worst year for me to add 11 sheep to my property. And 11 is probably a higher number than 3.2 acres should be sustaining at this time, or my 3.2 acres, because there are sections they don't get to, right? And it looks great. It looks great. So what's up with the sheep next? Well, here's the thing. When we got the sheep, I made an arrangement with my next door neighbor who has a barn and 16 cleared acres that overgrows. Yeah, Letty, those sheep moved way faster than I thought. And we're going to move them down there. So later today, after this, I'm walking from here to there through sort of a back section where we're going to run them through on the way there, which goes by the creek and some other things. And I'm going to look at the plants, and I'm going to look for milkweed. I'm going to look for mimosa trees, and I'm going to look for poison hemlock. Those are the three things I know that would be bad. I'm going to look for concentrations of legumes, but I don't think, I mean, like I've seen the section, I don't think that's a huge issue there. But I just want to know what's there on their way through. I'm going to go back. I'm going to go down to the pasture where they're going to be and make sure that poison hemlock is a really aggressive pioneering variety here. And we have it all along the creek, and it's blooming right now. So it's really easy to spot. I need to go check down at the pasture and see if there are any hemlocks sticking up. Not that a sheep will necessarily walk up to that and think it's tasty, but I don't want to risk it because it will kill them. And I don't want any more dead sheep. So we're just going to do that. And then they're going to start moving down there, I think, over the weekend. The thing that's happening over the weekend that we're kind of excited about is that there's rain in the forecast. Yeah, we haven't had, like, it is, here's how Tennessee usually works. Not all the time. I've been here through 2 other drought years. So this is, and I've only been here for 15 years. So every 5 years, apparently we get a drought. What happens usually is about an inch of rain falls once a week all summer long. Now, when you're growing stuff, that is ideal. And that is very different than where I grew up on the West Coast, where the dry season starts and that's it, right? But this year, we got a ton of rain and then we got no rain. And I've actually been running sprinklers on the garden, which is not as good as when the ground is saturated because, when the ground gets super dry, it's hydrophobic, meaning that the water just doesn't do anything until it soaks and then it becomes spongy. And then when you do water something, it wicks out, right, to the drier outlying areas. That's one thing. And then the step-in posts for the sheep have become impossible for tactical to step in because the ground is so hard. Now, this is something that will be remedied as we continue to rotate sheep through, because just because they're done here doesn't mean they're done here, right? And then Michael says the sheep's effect on where they've been will mean even more growth popping up between their visits in the cycle, right? So we're moving them over to the other pasture, but they'll be back here because part of the purpose of the sheep is to keep things beaten back here and to start regenerating some of the soil that's very hard clay. I have some areas where I have been able to get the soil much nicer through the addition of wood chips and cultivating it and ducks and chickens and all of the other things. But we're going to have those guys, ruminants coming through and eating, poultry coming through and picking at that, right? That's what we're doing. We're not doing the poultry follow through all of it, but some of it. And we'll see what we do with the ducks as the duck population gets bigger and bigger. But it's already, like, when Nick Ferguson drove up, he's like, there's been a huge fertility bump here, Nicole. And I was only here a few months ago. What happened? And I was like, meh. The pigs and the sheep happened is what happened. And now, I mean, like, I felt like when Nick was here and when Jack was here, it looked like crap because it was just overgrown everywhere. And I hadn't done any, like, we hadn't finished rotating the sheep through. I hadn't done much mitigation on some of the perilla that comes through at this time of year, because I was focused on Self-Reliance Festival. And I was like, it's not like perilla is really going to hurt anything unless you leave it and it chokes out plants. Like, it's just another plant. But now, like, I went away and I came back and it, like, looks fantastic. I'm like, you guys need to come now. we got it all. Like the sheep finished their job. It looks so good. Last week while I was gone, I left Tactical here alone for 100-degree days. And I think it only topped 100 degrees one day, but it was in the mid to upper 90s. And that is also unusual for June, although not out of the scope of what I've seen here. And he said, I was like, so did you do these things or those things and blah, blah, blah. He said, pretty much all I've done this week is keep things alive. I kept plants alive. I kept animals alive. And that's what I did. And I kept myself alive and I managed to cook my own food, because what happens when we're both here is, and I'm always like, I don't feel like I do that much with the livestock, because he does most of the work with the livestock. But I do keep plants alive, and I'm usually one who cooks dinner, not every night, but most nights for both of us, which means he'll work, and he'll hear the word dinner yelled out my door, and then he comes in and eats and goes back to doing whatever he does, right? And so when either one of us is gone, the other one's like, because it's kind of a 2-person or 3-person job right now. Working really hard, though, on simplifying the systems so that it's easier for one person to maintain it, but we're not there yet. So, but the way he kept the animals happy is he changed his plan for rotating the sheep to coincide with the coolest spot of our property here to be where the sheep were when it was hot. And so it's like 5-ish degrees cooler in the ravine where the water washes down. So I have a wet weather wash area that they were eating out, but it's all shaded. There's trees. It's in a ravine. It's a south-facing slope, but there's a north-facing hill before it. So that whole area it's a microclimate, right? It's a little wetter. It holds the water a little bit longer. And a breeze goes through there even when it's hot. Like that's where I will go read a book outside if I'm going to be outside, not in front of my house where the south sun hits, but out in that area on a camping chair is really nice. So the sheep actually were happier there this week, which was hotter than a couple weeks ago, right after Self-Reliance Festival, where it was a little bit cooler, a little bit more humid, but they were getting less of a breeze. And I was like, really worried. I was like, what do I do? Do I ice them down? Like, what do I do? Some of them still have hair on them. You need to drop your hair, guys. It's hot here. But they did great. So really happy about that. The other thing we learned about sheep this year is they are bucket racists. That's right. Sheep are bucket racists. They assess the color of the bucket and decide if they like it or not. And if it is a red or an orange bucket, they do not kick it over. And if it is a white bucket, they kick it over. Who knew? We're going to test blue buckets this week too. So just something to know about sheep. They have preferences, and the color of their water bucket apparently is one of their preferences. And that's actually for us good to know, because if we put all white buckets out there and they kick them all over, then they don't have water, and then we have a problem unless we're strapping them to trees or something. And then Billy hooked me up with a new sheep nutrient to try. So we're going to be putting that out today. And I am really excited to try it because I want these sheep to be super robust, parasite free. As I said, visiting somebody else's homestead or farm is always so informative for me. Like I learned a whole bunch about what I might need to do with my pigs differently. And then we talked a little bit about sheep, and I'm going to be probably asking for your wife's phone number so I can text her about sheep, Billy. But also like diving further into the whole sheep thing. And we're also looking for Timothy hay. So I'd like to get a barn full of Timothy hay now for the winter, because they're going to need it this winter. And right now is when it should be available in the area. So I'm looking for that so that they don't get a shock to their system, and we can kind of be feeding them the same hay they're going to have. That said, it is also time for me to harvest the fodder trees. And right now I'm going to be feeding those fresh to the animals. I may put some aside dried. I might make some silage. I don't know. Billy was talking about just harvesting the grass and letting that and saving that for winter too. So I'm going to look into what it'll take to do that, because I don't have a bag attachment on anything right now, which would make that easier. But that doesn't mean we can't just mow or scythe or something and let it kind of dry and figure that out. And then we're getting about 5 to 6 duck eggs a day, We're 2 weeks in on the Muscovy. No, we're 1 week in on the Muscovy setting her eggs, I think. 1.5 weeks. I have it on the calendar. So we'll see if we get chicks. I'm hoping tomorrow morning to be there when the ducks all run. Because what happens is even the mama duck runs off her thing in the morning and goes out and gets food and water. So I can candle them again and see how many look viable. If you've never candled eggs before, it's super easy. You just put a flashlight on them. In the coop, it's kind of dark anyway, so I put a flashlight on them, and you can kind of see blood vessels forming and stuff, and you can see the eggs that are not viable. And it's nice to get the unviable eggs out of there, because what happens with the unviable eggs is they rot and they explode and it smells. So that's something. I mean, usually the mom will sort of start kicking eggs out because she'll realize who's alive and who's not alive. But if they aren't, they aren't. Deborah O'Neill says, sheep are smart. They can recognize their own. They're shepherd and will not enter the barn if you put a blow up of a strange sheep in the doorway, but will if it's a sheep they know from the flock. Okay, so what I'm hearing is I need a blow up of a familiar sheep. No, just kidding. Yeah, they have preferences. It took them a few weeks to even like now Henry and Floki will walk up to us and let us pet him, and Bruni kind of lets us pet her. And the other ones sort of standoffish, but some of the young, like the little boys that are going to be food later this year, they'll let us handle them. But it's taken a lot of time hanging out with the sheep, like reading a book with the sheep. And I think that's important with any livestock, is to spend time with them so they get to know you. The livestock know tactical better than me. And the mistake I made a year ago with the pigs when they were born is I was so focused and so busy on some other things that I was like, well, pigs are his thing. And I didn't go down there and hang out with the baby pigs. And then when I had to take care of the pigs by myself, Lady Pig's friends with me, but the other pigs didn't know who I was. And that's like 5 pigs that all, if they cumulatively rush me, can knock me off my feet and hurt me, who didn't know who I was. And I was a stranger. So even when we have like house sitters come feed the pigs, right? It's kind of nice to have them out and at least have them get to know the pigs. When Michelle does the livestock, she's here enough with the roasting business. The animals are starting to know her smell, and that's super helpful too. So, and that's why I like having the community here, the holler neighbors, and the animals knowing who these people are makes it a lot easier when I'm gone and Tactical's gone and the other one's not there. But also spending time with the sheep has been key, I think, in them just developing a relationship and some trust. And if you're going to do livestock, think about that. Like having livestock you never interact with except for slaughter day or when you need to put something in their mouth or something. It just makes it a lot harder. It makes it a lot harder if you're not the one, if you don't have somebody with them on a regular basis. The next segment we're going to talk about is grow. This is where I just give you an update on how the food growing on the property is going. And there's a little overlap between like what we're foraging and how it's going. So Monday, before I left, I did a Garden 30 live and I had a glove on my hand and I was taking fistfuls of rabbit poop, which was kind of disgusting looking, I'm sure. And it was disgusting feeling through the glove. And I was going around in my garden everywhere that the plants looked like they did not have enough nutrient of some sort, where there's some yellowing or they didn't look green enough or they looked dry or whatever. And I put fistfuls of rabbit poop and I like dug the chips apart in some places because I've mulched down and just kind of smeared it into the ground. And then the next day I left. And Tactical had a sprinkler because we haven't had rain. He had a sprinkler on that Tuesday and Thursday because it's been that hot here. And plants need water support when it's hot, just FYI. I'm sure you already knew that. And it looks fantastic. So I asked him, I said, how's the garden looking? And his answer was, I don't know. I was just making sure animals were alive first and plants second. And I didn't even look up there because I had a timer on that. And I was like, okay. So before I go live, I guess I better go up to the garden and see how things look. And I went up there and the tomatoes that were looking kind of peaked looked great. The beans look great. Most of the plants I put some nutrient around have greened up. There's one basil plant that still looks sketchy. So I'm going to go look at it later today. I'm probably going to trim it way back. And the squash, the Tromboncino squash is just explode. Like they're getting long and climbing the trellis. And that looks great. I need to go back and take a gander at the cucumbers a little closer But we've got a lot going on there. I'm going to get some carrots this year, which was sort of a Hail Mary for me. I just put carrot seeds out for the fun of it because I don't usually get carrots. But I did loosen the ground fairly well this time, and I had some germination, even though we had drought. And now I have actual carrots. So I'm going to get like 5 carrots. Woo! I might do some fall carrots too this year. I might put some purposeful energy into that. We'll see. I have a lot of events this fall too, so keeping up on the garden and doing events isn't always like the easiest thing in the world, but that is what it is, right? We're going to start getting, it looks like we'll start getting summer squash next week. The green beans are still not in. I thought we'd be getting them this week. They are blooming right now. It's a very fast journey from blooming to a little bean that's an inch to a bean I'm going to harvest. So I think, especially if it rains, like it says it's going to rain this weekend, if it doesn't do that thing where the holler becomes the no rain zone and it rains all around us, then I think really green beans are coming on. So that's super. Like we're like right at the cusp where we've moved from the greens and the herbs and we're right into the fruiting things are starting to come on. The tomato wall it's up to my ceiling. I will do as one of my garden 30s. I will show you the ones I trellised a week ago. I'm looking at them out my window right now. One of them is a foot from the roof, like the tallest one. And then the others are about halfway up. That's how fast it's gone since just putting that trellis up and like they're like, okay, we're good to go. I'm going to have to balance the nutrients again because I don't think Tactical was adding nutrient, but he was adding water, which probably means the other system that's using a lot of water needs a lot more nutrient. And I have some bottom end rot on those, which means that the magnesium and the calcium needs to be dialed in. So I'll add some CalMag and I'll probably add some more Epsom salt to that system and just see if we can balance that out. Next segment is the holler neighbor community. This is where we talk about how we're all working together here to help each other out. Tactical was basically in charge of taking care of everything for the last 4 days. And he did it. He did a good job. It looks great. And not only was he taking care of all the stuff at the Holler Homestead, but Jenny's on the road too. So he's got the pigs next door. I think her dog is boarded. So that's all looking good. And I think he has been fill-in for Nighthawk while Nighthawk has been at work. So I think we're handling rabbits this weekend. I'm back to help with that though. So that's good. And that's why having next door neighbors who are all sort of aligned on the food growing project is super helpful because we fill in for each other. And, most often when I'm gone, it's Tactical taking care of things because we sort of tag team this property because there are 2 houses on this property. So we can tag team it. But the other neighbors fill in too. Like when we were at Self-Reliance Festival, there was a whole rotation of other holler neighbors going through and taking care of things as well as house sitters while I was gone just to make sure everything stayed up and running. And I think it did involve herding sheep. Hvac is happening, I'm pretty sure. I'm not 100% sure, but I've heard it's been poked at a little bit already. But my neighbor who has gotten into HVAC has a mini split to install here in the roasting shack so that it's not 120 degrees in there when I'm roasting, which is literally how hot it gets in there when I roast at this time of year. Usually I get up, I roast, and then I shower because it's like, why? I'm just gonna be covered in sweat. So I think that might get done before he goes away this weekend or in the next couple of days. I know he's been poking at it, but he has some other commitments too. And I'm really thankful to have him as a resource for that. So I don't have to figure out how to get the tool to charge the lines of the mini split that's going in over there. And then I wanted to share with you, some of you have already heard this story if you follow my YouTube channel, but this is also the audio podcast. Last weekend was a dedicated quiet weekend for me. And sometimes I have weekends where I just say, okay, no visitors, nothing. I'm going to chill out, reset, have time to think. You've seen a lot of my thoughts of the walk lately about taking that time because I've had a lot of things to think about and I've made some decisions about some content we're going to do in the next few weeks that I think is very important and fits the mission of helping all of us stand on our own 2 feet as best we can, no matter what happens. But last weekend was a scheduled quiet weekend. And the first thing that happened is Friday night, I hear a car pull up into my yard. I'm like, that doesn't sound like any car I know. And I look out the window and I'm like, oh, that's AutoFab's car. I guess he's arriving today and not tomorrow, which was fine. He was there to repair my car. So my car needed the rear assembly replaced, we thought. We actually found out something very different last weekend. And I was like, well, that's cool. Guest room's ready, whatever. And he doesn't care if I sit here and don't talk to him much because I'm kind of in a solitary, quiet mood. So he pops in and I'm like, but I think we're going to smoke a big hunk of pork this weekend so everybody gets fed. So I put out to the holler neighbors, by the way, Saturday, potluck at my place. I'm smoking some pork and we'll just have a good time. We'll hang out Saturday night. And if you want to bring something and come, great. So then behind AutoFab, my friend Eric walked in. And I was like, did you come with Auto? I was really confused because I was like, I thought AutoFab came by himself, but Eric's with him. What? He's like, well, I was just next door and I wanted to pop over and say hi. And so I was like, well, come in and talk. I'm in my PJs. It is what it is because it's, after 6 and I'm ready to go to bed by 7:30 because I'm, weird that way. Not quite, but sometimes I really am ready to go to bed by 7:30, especially when it's been a hard week and we just did a big event. So I was literally aiming for bed at 8 o'clock that night. And he came in and chatted for a while. He's like, so what time's this potluck tomorrow? And I was like, between 5 and 6, come on out. Why not? It'll be fun. And the thing about cooking a big hunk of meat like that is you can feed a lot of people and everybody just brings a side dish and you can feed more people. It scales the meal. It's kind of like Thanksgiving. And I was cooking what was not a cured ham, but the ham cut of a pig. So it was big. So that happened. And then the next morning I got a text from my buddy Matt to return the chicken plucker he borrowed. And he's the electrician, Matt. And I was like, well, I might as well invite him and his family too, because at this point we're having a party tomorrow at my house. So invited him. They decided to come. And then AutoFab got into the back of my car and started working on that. And he's like, no, what you need are shocks. I'm like, great, I don't have shocks. So then we worked on sourcing shocks. And I think 4 of us were involved in ordering shocks, getting extra supplies related to installing shocks. Whenever somebody was on their way here, it's like, what can I grab? I'm like, well, what you can do is stop by the O'Reilly's and pick up the fluid I need for the system, So we had all sorts of that going on. And then we had a really good time. And nothing that I planned to do on Saturday got done. And I cared 0% about that because what did get done is I got to have fun with my friends. And then everybody went home and Sunday came and I went to go swimming and the pool is closed for me until September. So I'm going to be going to a new pool starting this week because I'm not going to let that stop me from swimming laps once a week because that makes me happy. Anyway, I just wanted to share what that's like, because sometimes when you live in a community and you think you're going to do one thing, something else happens and it's totally worth it. I do like it when those sort of spontaneous things pop up. And at the end of the day, I had shocks in my car in time for my trip. We had a really good time hanging out together. Everybody ate well. And I think Tactical had pulled pork for the rest of the week while I was gone, which I'm going to do a rotisserie chicken today because I've been cooking a lot of pork lately. But we are serving pulled pork at the poultry processing workshop next week. Okay, our next segment is infrastructure. This is where we just talk about the infrastructure, how it's doing, what's going in, what's coming out, what's working, and what's not working, right? And the first thing I already talked to you about, step-in posts are not working, but if it rains this weekend, they will work again. The chicken netting is set up, and Tactical said, I remember why I hate chicken netting. He says that every single time that he puts the chicken netting up. So we tractor the meat birds and move them every day, but when they get about as big as they are now, we have to move them twice a day, unless we run chicken netting off of the tractor, and that gives them more forage. So that's basically what happened today, right? The sheep barn is getting set up. So the barn was set up for horses and there's some stuff in there. And so we're kind of clearing that out, organizing where the sheep stalls will be, because what's happening with the sheep when they move next door is they will be out during the day, but at nighttime, we're putting them up because coyotes. And it's just an extra protection against the coyotes because there's electrical fencing, but if a coyote really wants to get to the sheep, it's going to be like, whatever, right? So that's what we're doing there. The watering is on timers as much as possible. I have pots in front of my house that get hand watered once or twice a day right now. They dry out really fast. And I'm looking at figuring out a drip system for that. because they are wicking. So they fill up the bottom and then it wicks up, but they're going through a lot of water right now, and that's going to get more and more and more intense as summer goes. I'm also putting burlap around because the pots are black. I'm putting burlap around the outside of those, and I haven't started doing that, and I need to start doing that because the tomatoes are going to get too hot too if I don't do that. So the last thing we're looking at is putting in hydrants around the property further and further from the house, because right now to get hoses out, it's a whole bunch of hoses to get from one place to another. But I'm needing to reroute my water line to a different path. And while the excavator's here, if there's time, we're going to try to put in new piping for some of the hydrants that exist that have Schedule 20 piping, which is not right. And then also looking at adding a few new hydrants throughout the property so that moving any livestock through here is easier and we don't have to cart buckets quite as far. So that's everything that's going on with infrastructure. It's kind of a lot of little moving pieces. I think we're going to get into a prepper pantry roofing redo soon so that that's done. And the solar water heater is only disconnected for a couple of days because right now the solar water heater is banging. In fact, I should probably just go run random hot water because I'm pretty sure that it didn't run while I was out of town. And who knows how hot that water is, because it was hot this week. It was really, really hot. Okay, our last segment today, before we're going to jump into the Q&A that's live. So the podcast will end. And then those of you who want to stay and ask questions, put the first couple words in all caps. So I know you have it. I have one queued up right now. I'll star them so I can look at the questions. Anything you want to ask. I've also sent an invitation link out to any holler neighbor who wants to jump on in case you want to ask holler neighbors. Holler neighbors, if you're listening to this, go ahead and start getting into StreamYard. I put it out on our group, I think. Let me double check that. Maybe I didn't. I didn't. So I'm putting it out right now on our group, and just hop on if you want to hop on, and we'll get you in here, and hopefully all the audio will work. Here's the finance update. So we are looking, so after seeing how Billy does his pigs, I'm looking at sourcing food for the pigs that is not just pig feed. He talked about how he gets the mineral balance, which I know he talks about on his YouTube channel too, but somehow for me, when I see things in real life, I'm like, oh, interesting. You know, like how he does his water, gives pigs. Oh, interesting. We're about to need to do that, right? So I learned a ton of things. As I said, it is when you can go visit other people's farms and homesteads, guys, just go check them out. I learned a lot at Joel Salatin's too about fencing. So totally worth it. And I had some ideas of places I may be able to source free food for the pigs that I hadn't thought about before after I saw what his food looked like. And I don't know why, like seeing it in the buckets made the difference, but it made the difference. So we're going to look at that as well. And then just the overall update on the sheep. They are costing more than originally planned, but not alarmingly so. What's costing more is we are buying more hay than we thought we would, right? And then also more fencing supplies have been purchased. And that was something that was like, we have the minimum viable amount of fencing for these sheep when they arrived here. And then realized that it's a lot easier if you can pre-set up things for the sheep further in advance, which means more fencing, more posts, more reels, and all sorts of stuff. I think we are going to kind of do a breakdown in another few weeks of what we're doing for fencing, what fencing supplies we're using, what tools are really helpful to the whole thing, and that sort of thing. So that's what's up with the finance. It's costing more than we expected, but not alarmingly so. And I think it's totally worth it. Like totally worth it. The difference the sheep have made here has been fantastic. So with that, we're going to close today's podcast and then stay on after for any live chat y'all in the audience want to have. If you like the show and want to support the work I'm doing here, you can do it in two ways. One, get your coffee at hollerroast.com. Two, consider becoming a member. Our next webinar is next Thursday at 7 p.m. and it's 5 things to consider about event management. That's over at livingfreeintennessee.com. With that, guys, go out, make it a great week. Okay, guys, we've got 3 holler neighbors on here, none of them with faces except for me. Can I hear you guys? Jenny, say hi.
Redneck's working.
What'd you say?
The redneck's working.
The redneck's working. The redneck's not very loud. Jenny, are you there?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're quiet too. It's probably because my volume's turned down. So. Anyway, so guys, I haven't talked to either of you in 4 days. What's been happening?
Well, I'm still in Oklahoma.
You're in Oklahoma?
I am.
How is it? Is it weird?
It's like it makes me feel like it's same as being in Tennessee right now. It's super hot. The only difference is there's wind.
Yeah.
But I wake up like the few days I've been here, I've woke up and forgot that I'm here because it feels so much like there.
That's cool. And Tactical, I'll have you on mute. Make lots of noise. So you having fun there?
Yeah, navigating a lot of stuff. Signed the lease on an apartment.
Woohoo!
Yeah, all that fun stuff. It's not been fun enough though, so I'm hoping to have some fun tonight.
Okay, what are you going to do for fun, do you think?
Well, Landrick and I are going to go out for dinner, so we'll just see. We'll play it by ear.
Awesome. Cool. Okay, I'm going to tackle some questions because there's a bit of an echo. Tactical?
Yes.
What's new?
Oh, the sheep are in the last area of heavy overgrowth. I actually had to go in a few minutes ago and clear out some of the old growth so they could get to the inside of where it was at, because it's too thick for them to get to the center of it. So I went through and cut a bunch of stuff out. And then once they get through this section, that's the last bit of really heavy clearing. And from here, it's going to be a lot easier to run the electric fencing, at least around this property. And then we're starting to do the same thing over at the barn. So I've got pretty much everything around the barn cleared out so that I can set up the electric for basically their yard area, and then some form of a gate so that they can get from, the yard area out to where they're going to be grazing for the day.
Cool. Okay, Jenny, what do you think about that Bartlett tree?
I'm super surprised. I'm around the pigs all the time. I'm like, how did I not see it?
Because it's huge.
What? Okay. Is it in the pond or near the pond?
Yeah.
If you walk from the house to the tarp for their shelter, it's the tree on the far left that the tarp is tied off to. And the only reason that I noticed it was I went over there this morning to feed them, and I watched something fall and hit the ground and was like, what was that? And so I walked over there and found this little golf ball sized thing that was shaped like a pear and was like, huh. So I tossed one over the electric fence, and Lady Pig went crunch, swallow.
Yep.
Yeah.
By the way, it says Jenny will always be a holler neighbor. Yeah, once a holler neighbor, you're kind of stuck, right?
Yeah, I'm totally down with that.
Yeah. When we have vacation lots for sale, she's totally gonna get one, aren't you?
Yes.
Someday that is gonna happen when we get that land we really want to buy. There will be spots. Okay, guys, do you have any questions for us that you want to hear about from the holler neighbors? Jenny's video is messed up, probably not because her video is messed up, but because she's going over cell, and I think she's in her car. Is that correct?
No, I am in my hotel room. Let me see if this changed. Hold on a second.
Oh, now you're just a green stripe. Yeah, holler vacation homes, dibs. Yeah, I'm thinking if that land comes up that we do timeshares or whatever. I don't know. We will see.
We already have a vacation home here. It's just occupied by the meat chickens right now.
Yep. Well, what else do you guys want to talk about while we're on?
I did a live stream the other day with the sheep, and I am perfectly willing to do those, but I'm kind of running out of stuff to do them on. So if y'all want me to continue to do those, you need to email Nicole questions or things that you want to see or whatever. If I'm going to do them, they require at least some class participation.
Wow, somebody hurt the redneck. What, Jenny?
I didn't say anything. I'm trying to figure out how to work my phone.
Okay. Yeah, we still got weird audio from you. She's going out. Autumn says, "Did you get your Muscovy?" Tactical, you want to feel that one?
Yep. Dropping stuff. So we did get the Muscovies. One of them is sitting on eggs. I'm actually right over there close to them, so I'll walk over real quick. And then we've got 4, so we got 1 Drake. And right now, I have them kind of this area here. And then they have...
Tactical, you're on the edge of the network. I don't think you can show them. Yeah, I've been muting Jenny when I talk most of the time, and then I'm unmuting her when I'm done talking. That fixes the problem, but Tactical walked off the edge of the internet.
He did. He's still talking. There he is.
Oh, yeah, you can't show us the ducks because there's no internet down there for you. He froze too. Anyway, Tori's question is, have any of the holler neighbors ever built their own off-grid shed or tiny home? Jenny, have you done that?
I have not done that, but a good person to ask is Sean and Don Mills. They have their little spot out there in Linden. That's pretty awesome.
Yep. And that doesn't mean holler neighbors won't. I think there is some talk about getting some more tiny homes out here. We'll see how that goes. And I know Jenny's going to be all about it, right? If we do that.
Yeah, I would love to have something out there.
Yeah. So, Tactical, you're back.
Yeah, I apparently hit the edge of the network, so I just switched over to cell.
Okay. So, Tactical Redneck Sheep Sessions don't need questions. Just set up the camera and read a book like Nicole was talking about earlier. I bet people will still watch. Tactical, what do you think about reading aloud to people?
I don't know, but over by the sheep right now, most of them are just kind of chilling right now because we're getting into the hot part of the day.
The sheep do this a lot. It's called sitting in the shade chewing your cud.
That's what everybody has to build that. They built that into their life.
Yeah, I might chew my cud later today too.
They tend to go throughout the day in spurts. So they'll get up and eat for, I don't know, 15 minutes, half an hour, and then they'll go chill for an hour. And then once the sun gets behind the tree line, they'll start eating, and then they'll go till 9 or 10 o'clock at night. And then they'll just go back over to where they're bedding down at, and they'll stand there. And it's like watching one of the zombie movies where all the zombies are standing out in front of the door, just swaying. You shine a flashlight over there and you just see a bunch of sheep just standing there.
Yeah, we do funny thing with sheep. He fell off again for a second because I really it's so funny how much I love having sheep, and I was so resistant to sheep for a decade. I was like, I can't have sheep, they're too cute. I'm like, actually I can have sheep. The 30-day reviews. The plan for the sheep, besides what I talked about in today's podcast, is that we're going to have lamb meat. So there are about 4 or 5 of them that are getting processed in the fall, most likely. And then hopefully more will arrive this fall. I haven't really assessed if the ladies are truly pregnant. They probably are. It will become obvious, I assume, just like it does with every other animal we've had that's pregnant. Letty says, Sheep on a Jeep. It's a whole kid series of books. You could read that while sitting with the sheep. Tactical. You'd have a whole new... You just need to not say the F word when you're doing that.
That might make it more fun.
What, if he said the F word?
Yeah.
Yeah, but, you know, if kids are listening. Yeah.
He could have 2 different readings, though. He could have the adult reading and the kid reading, the kid-friendly
I do
reading.
mark all my videos as not appropriate for kids, just in case something happens. Yeah. Well, anything else you guys want to know about, listeners, or anything Holler Neighbors want to share?
I have been sad this trip. I didn't realize how emotional the idea of leaving the holler was going to make me.
Well, I'm not surprised to hear that. We're sad too. I'm actually trying to figure out what kind of a send-off you might want. Like, are we doing a party?
We could totally do a party. We should talk about that when I get back home.
Yeah, because you're going to be leaving like the same day my sister leaves from her visit.
Yeah.
So.
And I think there's a GSD that weekend too.
There is a GSD that weekend at Carrie's.
Yeah.
And there's a meetup at Standing Stone Park for one of the.
Yeah, I lost. Like, I can't hear it all.
Yeah, I've lost audio too.
Yeah. Well, it says Nicole's mic is muted.
No, Nicole muted herself.
I muted myself so I wouldn't answer on Jenny. So I was answering the question, what would you do that Boyd asked? Like, what would you do first, goats or sheep? What's better?
Sheep.
Tactical says sheep. I say it depends on what your goal is and what infrastructure you have, because goats eat brush in a different way. So Tactical is cutting out thickets because the sheep can't penetrate to the middle. The goats can. But goats get out. Get out, and they have a little bit different of a demeanor. They're a little bit more mischievous. I like their milk. I don't know if I like sheep's milk or not. So I think it just depends on what your goals are. That said, sheep are calmer. But Nick mentioned that sheep are sheep. They'll like follow you, and that willingness to follow you can get them in trouble. Likewise, goats are trying to get out all the time. And so that mischievousness can get them in trouble. But when you pair goats with sheep, which we're going to test, like the sheep mellow out the goats and the goats make the sheep braver, which can be good for both animals. So we are going to try to see if they will get along with Clover and if she can run with them, and if that will mellow out some of the goatness of the goat and some of the sheepness of the sheep. Leos asks, what are you canning these days? I did 3 bushels of beets this weekend, with the exception of the beet ketchup, which I just put the beets in the freezer that I'm making ketchup with because they're going to get pureed anyway. And this weekend, I don't know what I'm canning, but I have a feeling that pickle season's coming on. So I have a feeling that pickling cucumbers are about to come into my life, even if I didn't grow them. And definitely green beans are starting to come on at the farmer's market. So hoping to be able to can all of those things soon. Corn won't come on for another 4 weeks, pretty much.
And to go back real quick to the sheep versus goat thing, if you're asking the question, that probably means you have experience with neither. So sheep are going to be easier to handle. Goats are going to be a lot more scorched earth on getting rid of brush that you don't want. But if you're just starting out, you might want to start with sheep just because they are a lot easier.
Tell that to not home.
Jenny says, tell that's a Nighthawk, because the first day Nighthawk was in charge of the sheep when we were at Self-Reliance Festival and he was not yet. They got out and he couldn't get them back in until Jenny came. And then Jenny's like, here's how you get sheep back in. You totally schooled him, didn't you?
I did. Well, we ended up adding extra fencing around the outside too.
Yeah.
I mean, I had to tweak the fencing from the way I was doing it to what I'm doing now. I was just running a single strand. Now I'm running 2, and I've had a lot less problems with them getting out. But there is no possible world where I would ever think about trying to contain a goat with 2 strands of electric.
Hey, my love.
Depends on the goat. But not Clover. Grumpy Acres says, is the planning for Butcherfest moving forward? The planning for Butcherfest is moving forward. I didn't know if it would, because I think it's July 29th and 30th and 31st, like that weekend. Friday arrival, Saturday all-day session, Sunday half-day session. In Camden, Tennessee, we're doing a swale installation workshop. And I didn't know if all the work going to that was going to preclude the ability to do Butcherfest right before the next Self-Reliance Festival. But that was part of why I wanted to sit down with Billy out at Permapasture Farms in person and just be like, okay, how is this working? It's a lot of travel. He also needs to be home on his farm sometimes, because his wife has been holding things together when he and William leave. But, as we all know, it's better to have multiple hands on the farm. And so we sat down and we are moving forward with Butcherfest. It looks like we have a line on the source for the animals to be processed. Where we're at with that right now is firming up head count, ticket price, and schedule. But I think it'll be Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday before Self-Reliance Festival. And then Friday, Billy and I are both probably going to go to our separate corners of the world and disappear for one day, because Self-Reliance Festival is then one day after that. The weekend before that is Back to the Land Conference, and I'm going to be speaking at that too, which is very close geographically. So if somebody wants to make an entire vacation of it, you can go to Back to the Land, Butcherfest, and then Self-Reliance Festival. So that's all happening. The tickets for Butcherfest I will have worked out sometime by the end of the week next week. The tickets for the swale workshop are going up later today. I have all the information I need to do that. I'm going to talk to John Willis one more time and make sure, these are the dates. Is everybody okay with these dates? And then we'll pull the trigger on that. I didn't want to sell tickets and then find out we need to do it a week later. So that's all what's happening. So it's like Event City, man. It's Event City, because I'm doing a food forest installation Halloween weekend here. And that's going to be a smaller event, maybe 20, 30 people, where we talk about how to plan your food forest. We're going to do the earthworks for the food forest here, and then plant cover crops. And then at my April spring workshop in 2023, we're going to plant the trees and bushes and other things in that as one of the sessions, among all. We'll have all the usual sessions, right, where we have people coming and speaking about different topics, but there will be the planting of the food forest is going to also happen, which is 3 weeks later than I'd want to usually do it, but it will be fine because we will put watering systems in. Anyway, Autumn says, Leo says, on sheep and goats, I think part of the depends is how many you were planning for. A goat is 2 lead where you want them to, and keep on tethers is very different situation from 10 plus sheep in a paddock. That's true. And then Autumn says, and start cheap ruminants until you figure out ruminants. Yeah, so ruminants, I have raised goats for years and not had the problems that we had with the sheep when they got here. But I am glad that I had goats before sheep, because it would have been a bit of I think it's harder to kill goats than sheep. That's my impression. I could be wrong, though. But learning about ruminants and how to keep them healthy and how to keep them from getting bloat, which has been our issue, and how to keep them parasite-free is all part of it. Justin wants to know, pigs, where did he say this? Pigs or sheep? No, pigs or goats. Oh, no, sheep or pigs.
Sheep or pigs. Yeah.
Pigs. Why not both?
It depends.
Yeah.
I mean, I've got
I
a
think
out with the pigs that they don't really get out.
Yeah, the pigs don't get out anymore. What were you going to say, Jenny?
I was just going to say, I think if you're going to start with pigs, if it's your first time, I'd start out with a smaller breed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think unless you have your fencing figured out or you have helped other people with their big pigs, it is, or you've worked with other large livestock. Pigs are big and they can knock you over. And American guinea hogs are a lot smaller. And I had small pigs first, and even for me, like going from the small pigs to the big pigs was a little terrifying because I knew that they run faster than I do and they weigh more than I do, and that is disconcerting. And they have sharp teeth.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm guessing that like Brutus was a Duroc, and I'm just guessing he probably weighed between 12 and 1,500 pounds. And that truck in its current configuration probably weighs about 1,500 pounds. So smaller breed pig. Well, let's just say this. Trying to move a Duroc is like trying to move my truck. Like, go with a smaller breed pig if you're starting out.
Yeah, and that can be helpful with anything. Like small goats are easier to handle than big goats, but they jump higher. So that's important to know. So some of the bigger goats might be easier if the problem is they keep jumping over their fence, which used to be my problem. Nick actually laughed at me when he saw my goats. He's like, I told you not to get that kind of goat, Nicole. They jump over fences. I'm like, yes, they do. And onto roofs.
Clover hadn't been on the roof in a while.
Yeah. Jenny, what were you going to say? I think you got cut off because we didn't know you were talking.
No, I'm good.
Okay. Leo says it's hard to lead pigs. So let's talk about how hard is it to lead pigs exactly, guys?
It's an apple. That's it. You just lead them with an apple.
How far can you lead them with an apple before they take that apple from you, though?
4 inches.
We need lots of apples to go far.
Yes.
Yeah, I think the most effective way that I found to do that takes a really long time because it's basically walk 20, 30 feet, throw a scoop of corn on the ground. Walk 20, 30 feet. After they finish eating that, throw another scoop of corn on the ground.
Yeah. Yeah, and the debacle of moving them 1/10 of a mile to Jenny's house was, we were not leading pigs anywhere.
No, they do what they want. Some of that's handling them too, though, right? Like they. I'm not saying they haven't been handled. I'm just saying they haven't been handled as much as maybe they need, as far as looking at you as somebody that they want to follow.
Yeah, and that's also the fact that they have not been even rotating them the way that they are right now. It's not like every day they're going somewhere new, whereas the sheep for the last month, every time I take the electric fence down and try to get them to follow me, they will follow me because they know once we get to wherever I'm going, there's something good there to eat. So they've already gotten accustomed to, like, they got out the other day and there was a problem with the fence, and I just called them and was like, come on. And they came right back where they needed to be, and I didn't have any issues getting them to go back in.
Pigs, on the other hand,
They're like, I'm going to stand here and eat this, and there's nothing that you're going to do about it.
And there literally is nothing you're going to do about it.
And like
Autumn says, routine is key.
Yeah. And like I say, too, bigger is harder. Like, I'm pretty sure with Brutus, I could have done some kind of a flying drop kick and just bounced off of him, and he wouldn't have moved.
Yeah. Yeah. Although he was very corn motivated.
Yeah.
He was a very gentle pig for his side too.
Well, I think he was.
Blood and freedom is more desirable to them than marshmallows inside the fence.
I think
Same.
he was docile because he was so big. He didn't need to, like.
He was raised to be docile too, though.
I'm 1,500 pounds and you're 150 pounds. What are you gonna do? But when he got here, he was not corn motivated at all. That was something that was developed while he was here.
Okay, that makes sense. I just remember loading him out that last time. Should have been on video. We kept trying to lead him with corn, and he kept getting the corn before I could lead him. Finally, you're like, give me that. What we've learned from this is Nicole should not be in charge of the corn with the pigs. Although I did come up with the apple trick with Lady Pig. Okay, anything else you guys want to share? I'm not seeing a bunch more questions in the live feed.
No, that's everything I got for now.
All right. Well, guys, thanks for joining in. If you want to catch more live recordings of the podcast and more live feeds, hit that like and bell button and then choose all to just get notified when we've gone live for this or a Garden 30. Really appreciate you tuning in to Living Free in Tennessee this week. And we will be back next Friday with another homestead update where I've actually been on the homestead for the week, so I'll know a little bit more about what's going on. I'm going to run up to my garden and check out my cucumbers next. Have a great weekend.